Reflections from Torch Trust, focusing on Christian faith and sight loss.
Hello and welcome to Reflections. This is the show from Torch Trust that focuses on faith and disability in today's world. I'm your guest host, Grace Dawson, standing in for Marilyn Baker this week. Now, I recently came across a book that Torch had transcribed in Braille and large print. I discovered that the author, Bernadette Meaden, had actually written to thank us for doing this, as she felt it was really important that a book which talked about disability be available in accessible formats. Of course, how right she was, I thought. Well, my interest was piqued, and as soon as I'd read the book, I knew that we had to have Bernadette on the show to explore her wonderful piece of work. The book is called How the Bible Can Help Us Understand Illness, Disability and Caring, and it's part of a series. I'd like to start by sharing an extract from the book with you now. This was specially recorded for us by Bernadette herself.
I was given a striking example of how people who appear weak can be a source of strength to others at my mother's funeral. After the Mass, a person whom I'd never met offered their condolences, and I was slightly at a loss to know what that connection had been to my mum. When I asked, they replied, "Oh, your mum got me through my cancer." They explained that though mum had never met them, she knew their family and had heard about the cancer diagnosis that way. Although at the time mum was quite frail, virtually housebound and often bedbound, she phoned to wish them well as they began their treatment. They enjoyed their chat, and after that she phoned on a regular basis as they struggled with the gruelling side effects. She occasionally sent little cards and encouraging messages, and they knew she was praying for them. This support, they said, had played a huge role in their recovery. To the world, my elderly mum may have appeared weak and dependent on the care of others, but her concern and compassion for a person much younger than herself had helped carry them through the biggest challenge of their life. Strength can come in all shapes and sizes, and it is not the sole preserve of the fit and healthy. As Paul says, there are varieties of gifts, but the same Spirit, and there are varieties of services, but the same Lord. There are varieties of activities, but the same God, who activates all of them in everyone. To each person, the manifestation of the Spirit is given for the general good.
If you enjoyed the extract from Bernadette's book, Illness, Disability and Caring, we'll be sharing how to get hold of it at the end of the show. But now, let's hear from the author herself. This is my interview with Bernadette Meaden. Bernadette, thank you so much for joining us on Reflections. Obviously, your book is part of a series. How did you come to get involved with this?
That's a good question. Well, Virginia Moffat, who is the editor of the whole series, I got to know her through Ecclesia. I don't know if anyone's familiar with that. It's an organisation website that I've done quite a bit of writing for in the past, and she was involved with them too. So after she left Ecclesia and was asked to edit this series, she thought of me and invited me, and I did turn it down at first because I wasn't, I didn't feel confident that I'm certainly not a theologian, and I've not got any expertise as I would think. But Virginia was very encouraging and said, "No, I'm sure you can do it." So I kind of went back and said, "Yes, then I'll do it," and I'm really glad I did now.
Yeah. And so I know in the introduction you mentioned that you do come to this from a place of lived experience. So do you mind talking a bit about that?
Yeah, sure. I was born with complex congenital heart disease, which was, quite serious. And it was one of those scenarios where people, doctors tell my mum that I wouldn't live till I was 5, and then, she probably won't live till she's 7, and this kind of thing. But I've been very, very lucky in the fact that, thank God for the NHS, treatments. Every time I got into a really rough patch, a treatment seemed to arrive, progress was made. And so I've had like numerous operations and treatments over the years, but they've kept me going, which is great. I didn't really expect to be here now, so that's been, I've just been very grateful to the NHS for keeping me going for so long.
Yeah. Oh, I'm so glad we have it. It's a wonderful thing.
Yeah.
So something that you talked about in the book that I thought was really interesting was the story of the man who was blind, who Jesus healed, and
Yes.
then the Pharisees still didn't want to seem to talk to the man himself, and particularly them sort of asking his parents. I thought it was very interesting how you likened that to the thing you say about people asking a friend or carer questions about the person with a disability and ignoring the person themselves. Can you talk a bit about that and like why that was so important to include this in the book?
Yes, I mean, when I first started reading the Gospels for the book, that story really sort of leapt out at me and really stood out, because it felt very modern in some ways. And it was like a little sort of concise drama. There was a lot happening, and there were a lot of different characters. And I just felt that fact that, people said, "Oh, we don't believe him, we'll go and ask his parents," sort of diminishing the man as if he couldn't speak for himself. I think that's how many disabled people feel, often overlooked and sort of patronised. And the fact that, he said, "I can speak for myself," and his parents said he can speak for himself, go and ask him. I thought that was really important, and it reminded me of, there used to be a radio programme called Does He Take Sugar?, which was about disabled people, and it was about that fact that, often a disabled person who's perfectly capable, but maybe accompanied by a carer or a parent or whatever, would be overlooked, and the parent or carer would be asked that question. Does he take sugar? As if the person can't say whether they want sugar in the tea. So I felt that really struck a chord and felt like a very modern story in a lot of respects.
Definitely, yeah. And I thought it was another bit. I mean, I thought it was a fantastic book. So I'm saying this bit's good. This
Thank you
bit's
very
good.
much.
I thought it was all really good. But I thought it was very interesting. I've just got the actual quote up here where he said, "Illness and disability are not visited on us for any reason. They are not punishments. They simply happen as a manifestation of the infinite variety and diversity of life." I thought, again, that's just something that really needs saying, because people still want to look for a reason or behave like someone's deserved it or something, which is terrible.
Yeah, and that was one of the, that was another point that I wanted to get across as strongly as I could, really, because I was a bit horrified when I looked at some of the things that appear on particularly American websites, about disability being a punishment, and it's just horrific, really, when you think about it. So yeah, I really wanted to get that point across as strongly as I could. And obviously, it's just, we're all different. Every person who ever has lived or ever will live is genetically unique. And amongst that variety are disabilities, but that's, that doesn't make a person any less a person.
We'll be hearing more from Bernadette in just a few moments, but now it's time for our thought for the week. This coming Wednesday, the 1st of November, is All Saints' Day, and that's the topic that's been on the mind of Ian Lackey. Ian is blind and is a former Torch Fellowship Group chair. Our reader today is Michael Stafford.
We're approaching that time of the year when many branches of the Christian Church remember those who've gone before. The 1st of November is celebrated by many as All Saints' Day, when the illustrious dead are remembered. Most of us no longer pray to saints. We don't expect them to be working on our behalf, so we may not be keen to celebrate saints at all. However, there is much to be gained by remembering from time to time those for whom we have an admiration and who have gone before us. Perhaps they were people of faith who influenced us and helped us when we were younger. Many of us remember our Sunday school teachers from childhood, and surely there were teachers, parents, or other relatives whose example and guidance we remember. It's always a good thing to thank God for those who have gone before us. I really like a little passage in the Bible where St. Paul reminds the younger Timothy that both his mother and his grandmother were believers.
I am reminded of your sincere faith, a faith that dwelt first in your grandmother Lois and your mother Eunice, and now, I am sure, dwells in you as well. For this reason I remind you to fan into flame the gift of God, which is in you through the laying on of my hands. For God gave us a spirit not of fear, but of power and love and self-control.
Paul encourages Timothy to look to those who have gone before as an act which will strengthen his own faith. So it is with us. As I give thanks to God for those who have influenced me, I draw strength from their examples to help and empower me in the work to which God has called me. So, happy All Saints' Day.
You're listening to Reflections from Torch Trust, and it's time for the second part of our interview with Bernadette Meaden, author of the book How the Bible Can Help Us Understand Illness, Disability and Caring. Towards the start of the book, you talk about how, as you were writing it and as you were coming to the end of writing it, it was sort of as COVID was happening, the pandemic was sort of, it must have been a very interesting time at which to be writing this. And I noticed later in the book, you talk about how the key workers were people who had been low paid, not really considered, respected. And I know you say it's to be hoped that the new appreciation for them continues after the pandemic. Do you feel that that has happened at all, or do you feel we're back where we were? Or
Yeah, I think there's a lot of lip service paid to wonderful carers and marvellous NHS workers, but it's really not translated into anything practical. Obviously, the doctors are striking, the nurses were on strike for higher pay. I mean, they've not had pay rises for quite a number of years, and they're really struggling. And it's not even the fact that they're struggling is bad, but even worse is the fact for the general population that they decide to give up and leave. Where do we go? Because doctors are frequently being lured abroad by promises of much higher wages and better conditions. So we really, really have to value them if we want to keep them. And kind words don't do that. We have to show it in the fact that they should be paid fairly and, the conditions should be good. So, yeah, we have to value them.
Yeah. And I know the book talks a lot about some of the things that need to change and gives some great advice on things that people can do practically, particularly with the questions and the taking it further sections. What would you say, what is something that people can do, ordinary people can do? How can we affect change? It's not a simple question, but...
No, it is. It's really difficult. But yeah, I do make the point that, charity and volunteering for food banks and doing things like that, it's brilliant, it's great, and hats off to anybody that does that kind of thing. But you really need to change things economically and socially so that people are not in the position where they need a food bank, or because I can't think off the top of my head of the figure, but it's a very high percentage of people at food banks are either disabled themselves or have a disabled family member. They're affected by disability, and it shouldn't be the case that people in those situations are even struggling to eat. So we really need to have a stronger social security system, and obviously better wages for people who are low paid. And I think the only way that you can really hope to change that is through politics, and you've got to make known your views to the people who represent us, or that we vote in to represent us. So if you have an MP, let them know what you think. And obviously at an election, when people are looking for your vote, make them known what your priorities are, and that a fair society for everybody is a priority, and not just something that we can sort of paper over the cracks with food banks and things like homeless shelters and things. We really need a fairer system.
Absolutely, yeah. So that's some good, solid things people can do, but we all need to do them.
Yes, and just, really make your views known. Stand up and be counted.
Yeah.
I think it's the biggest thing to say.
Yeah, absolutely. And do you mind telling me a little bit more about your own sort of faith experience and perhaps how that shaped your life, shaped the writing of the book as well?
Yeah, well, I was brought up a Catholic, and I went to a convent Catholic school, which obviously, was a great influence on me. And I still count myself as a Catholic, but I'm sort of diverging a bit from some of the teachings and things. But what I do value is the Gospels and the inspiration of the Gospels, and particularly, the life and teachings of Jesus. I just find those constantly, an inspiration and fascinating. And so that's my sort of perspective. And that was one of the reasons I enjoyed doing the book, was because it sort of, it made me think about certain parts of the Gospels in different ways than I had before. So, it was a kind of learning experience as well. So I enjoyed it.
Yeah, and I think that certainly happens as a reader as well. It certainly made me consider perhaps well-known passages from a different angle, which I think is a great thing to do.
Yes, yeah, it's it's amazing to think that these things they're 2,000 years old, but you can still find a new angle, and they can still sort of resonate with things in the modern world.
Definitely. And so finally, do you have anywhere that people could find more of your writing?
Well, most of the writing I've done has been for Ecclesia, and that's www.ecclesia.co.uk, and that's Ecclesia with 2 Ks.
Well, I mean, I hope you continue writing, because I thought the book was fantastic. So
thank you. Thank you very much.
Brilliant, and thank you so much for coming on the show.
Oh, no, thank you. It's been a pleasure.
Well, I'm sorry to say that we're all out of time for today. If you like the sound of Bernadette's book, and I thought it was an excellent read, and it's designed to be read either alone or used as part of a Bible study group. There are prayers, discussion questions, and more included with each chapter. So, if you think you'd be interested in reading that, you can get hold of the book in Braille and various sizes of large print from Torch. Just give us a call on 01858 438 260, or you can go to our website torchtrust.org, hover over Living with Sight Loss in the menu at the top, and select Bibles, Books and Magazines from the drop-down menu. That page has information about all of our books and a link to our online shop. If you'd like copies of the standard print version, or you're interested in the other books in the How the Bible Can Help Us Understand series, then please visit the publisher's website, dartonlongmantodd.co.uk. So that's dartonlongmantodd.co.uk. And you can give us a call or send us an email to be reminded of any of this information, or to leave us a comment, question or suggestion for the show. The number is 01858 438 260. That's 01858 438 260. And you can email info@torchtrust.org. So until next week, from me, Grace, and everyone on the Reflections team, goodbye and God bless.
You've been listening to Reflections from Torch Trust.